Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 228. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the afternoon of Saturday, July 24th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Didn't have a podcast last week because the trophy wife and I were inundated with grandchildren. We had 4 grandchildren who spent the weekend here from Friday night till Monday morning. We had lots of fun, but they were lots of work and they took up all of our time. Not complaining, just letting you know that's why we didn't have a podcast last week. But this is another week and we do have a podcast. And it's kind of a follow-up, from the last podcast I did, 227, entitled Conspiracy Theories Be Damned. And we talked about conspiracy theories and why most of them are just a bunch of baloney or at least partially true. And with a conspiracy theory, quite often you'll have 3 pieces of information, and those 3 pieces of information build into 25 pieces of information. Maybe becomes probably becomes definitely, okay? And that's why conspiracy theories quite often go south. Now, one of the biggest and probably most controversial conspiracy theories of all times, chemtrails. No, not contrails, chemtrails. And you may or may not have heard the term chemtrails. If you're a coast-to-coast guy or gal, you've definitely heard of it. If you're a conspiracy theory fan, you've absolutely heard of them. But we're going to talk about chemtrails, and I'm going to give you the facts as to why some people think that chemtrails or contrails are definitely chemtrails. And a lot of times those theories are theories based in facts. In other words, 1 + 2 + 3 quite often equals 6. So it's not a far-fetched story. But we're going to talk about chemtrails in the essay today on The Strong Show. Before we do that, I wanted to share a couple of items. Had to do with some of it being my trip this week. I was back on the road with the day job, flew into Atlanta Airport, and I worked all week long in Georgia and South Carolina. And most everything is opened up, folks. All restaurants are open to speak of. The hotels were full. The rental cars are expensive. The planes were packed. The airports were very full. It's certainly pre-pandemic. The only thing that was different is, of course, in the airport, you need to wear masks. They ask that you social distance, but really people don't. Some of the customers that I saw, you did have to wear a mask when you were in there, while some of the people didn't quite often. All guests need to wear masks, even if you've been vaccinated, even if you don't run a fever. But I get that. In fact, the one place, I was the visitor and I was the only person who was wearing a mask. But I understand why they made me put on a mask, because this place makes face masks. So I got to use one of their products, and it's a very nice mask, by the way. It's kind of like the blue fan type surgical masks that you see made in China all the time, except for it's very nice. It's well made. The fabric is soft, not that hard, crisp paper. It's a nice, soft, non-woven product, and you see them in CVS and Walmart. Made in Atlanta, Georgia. But other than that, things have just basically gotten back to normal. There was another thing that happened this week, and that was Jeff Bezos going into space. I think was it last week or week before last? Richard Branson went up into space. And these are billionaires who founded their own companies. Was it Virgin Galactic, I think, is Branson's company, and Blue something or another is Bezos' company. And they went into space, and there's a lot of technology that was involved. And is space tourism going to be a thing? Don't know. That's them, but they've put over $1 billion of their own money into this program, and it turned out just fine. Nobody was hurt. It went up, it came down. Life is good. I thought it was very cool, actually. A lot of people were bashing these guys, though. And one of them was a a radio guy who I've listened to, and most of the time I agree with him, but I don't agree with everybody all the time ever. And the guy's name is Mo Kelly, and he's out of Los Angeles, KFI. And I was listening to, I like to in the evening sometimes listen to on KFI, AM 640 on iHeartRadio. I like to listen to them, the Tim Conway Jr. show, okay? That's Tim Conway, the comedian, his son, has a very, very enjoyable radio show on in the evening. Anyway, he was on vacation and Mo Kelly sat in for him. And he was talking about all this money that Branson and Bezos wasted on going up into space. That was just a big waste of money. They could have taken that money and put it towards solving the homeless problem. Now, in theory, that sounds good, okay? In theory, surely $1 billion, they could have solved the homeless problem with that, right? And besides, why would they just waste all this money? Well, here's the dirty little secret about the space program. Who do you think was hired to build, design, and build those rockets and staff them and everything else? Do you think they imported everything from China? No, they built that stuff here. Technology, manufacturing, good jobs for American workers, and they're learning stuff. And they're doing it for a fraction of what NASA spent. So if you figured a way to do something, if NASA would have charged $100 billion to do this, and they did it for $1 billion, that alone is a big deal. Plus that $1 billion, it put a lot of people to work doing really cool stuff. But getting back to what Mo Kelly said, could they have taken that $1 billion and done something with the homeless? Well, let's look to see what government has done in the past to try to solve the homeless problem. In 2019, New York City, Mayor de Blasio put $3.2 billion towards solving the homeless problem in New York City. Is it solved? No, it's worse than ever before. Okay. And that's over 3 times what Mo Kelly suggested Bezos put into solving the homeless problem. California, $4.8 billion in the next 2 years, what they plan on spending on solving the homeless problem. They already put $1 billion a year every year in Los Angeles alone. And it keeps getting worse. The next 2 years, Governor Newsom says he wants to spend $12 billion in California solving the homeless problem. $12 billion. That's $6 billion a year. Now, perhaps I'm going to be wrong, but after spending $12 billion of the taxpayers' dollars to solve the homeless problem, what do you think that the homeless problem is going to be like in 2 years? That's right. Probably bigger than it is right now, because the homeless problem continues to grow in Southern California. Because basically, have you ever been to Venice Beach? Beautiful. It's full of eclectic people. It's a lot of fun. You really can't go to Venice Beach anymore because it's full of homeless tents. Okay? Now, of those of you listening to the sound of my voice, how many of you can afford a home on the beach in Southern California? I'm going to say probably none of you. If you can, congratulations. But if you're homeless, you can just put a tent up and live there. So that's kind of your home and you're kind of your house and you kind of have a place on the beach. And what's the government saying? We just want to do more for you. We'll give you more food, give you more stuff, give you more fill in the blank. Think about it. The homeless problem in this country will never be solved until the homeless people want to help themselves. And I'm not saying there aren't homeless people that want to help themselves. I'm not saying there's not homeless people who are mentally ill and need to be probably institutionalized. Okay. But a lot of them are drug addicts. Okay. Let's just be honest about it. And they don't want to get off the drugs. I mean, think about it. On the surface, a life of drinking, drugging, and living on the beach and never hitting a lick and having people give you food and tents and sleeping bags, not a bad gig if you can get it. Just my opinion. last of all, because before we get into the chemtrails conspiracy theory, Brad Hildebrand, longtime radio guy, owns used to be on old KSOQ 98 FM. He now has KSOQ, what was it, 1017? That's probably the wrong. No, it's a different call letter. But anyway, he's got a couple stations here that he's on. Him and Shelley Waldman Barr have BS in the morning. But he's got a new column out. It's called radiopoop.com. Yeah, RADIOPOOP.com. And it talks about stuff going on in the radio business. As far as I know, there is nobody who writes a daily column anymore about the radio business. Brad does. So check it out. It's very exciting. It's very informative, if not exciting. Radiopoop.com. Okay. Today's podcast, today's essay is going to be about chemtrails. Not contrails, chemtrails. First of all, what are chemtrails and what the heck are we even talking about? And why am I wasting time on this conspiracy theory when the last podcast just said, you know what, most conspiracy theories are baloney? Well, the chemtrail conspiracy theory, chemtrail is like the long-lasting condensation trails that you see up in the sky from the airplanes. A lot of people call them chemtrails. And some people say they consist of chemical or biological agents left in the sky of high-flying aircraft, sprayed for nefarious purposes undisclosed to the general public. Now, believers in this conspiracy theory say that while normal contrails dissipate relatively quickly, contrails that linger must contain additional substances. Those who subscribe to the theory speculate that the purpose of the chemical release may be solar radiation management, weather modification, psychological manipulation, human population control, or biological or even chemical warfare, or perhaps testing of biological or chemical agents on a population, and that these chemtrails are causing respiratory illnesses and other health problems in people. Now, the claim has been dismissed by the scientific community, of course. There is no evidence that purported that chemtrails differ from normal weather-based contrails routinely left by high-flying aircraft under certain atmospheric conditions. Now, although proponents have tried to prove that chemical spraying occurs, their analysis has been flawed or based on misconceptions, according to one report. Now, because of the persistence of the conspiracy theory people and questions about government involvement, scientists and government agencies around the world have repeatedly explained that the supposed chemtrails are in fact normal contrails. Now, way back when chemtrail conspiracy theories began to circulate after the United States Air Force published in 1996 a report about weather modification. Now, following this report's publication in the late 1990s, the Air Force USAF was accused of spraying the U.S. population with mysterious substances from aircraft, generating unusual contrail patterns. Now, these theories were posted on internet forums by people like Richard Finke, William Thomas, and others. And they were championed, or at least discussed, on Coast to Coast by Art Bell, starting in 1999. Now, as the chemtrail conspiracy theory spread, federal officials were flooded with angry calls and letters. A multi-agency response attempting to dispel the rumors was published in 2000 by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and NASA, the National Aeronautic and Space Administration, and NOAA, NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And they all said it's bunk. Now, why did this even happen? Well, in early 2000, the USAF released an undated fact sheet that stated that the conspiracy theories were a hoax fueled in part by citations to a 1996 strategic paper drafted within Air University titled Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. Now, this paper was presented in response to a military directive to outline a future strategic weather modification system for the purpose of maintaining the United States military dominance up to and through 2025. but it identified it as a fictional representation of future situations